you. Jean-Louis Trudel, title of the story, Finding Faith. After the rains, the howling winds, and the deadly floods, there was silence. The morning after the typhoon, the sun shone again on the hills of the Miyagi backcountry. Despite the echoing whine of chainsaws, it was quiet enough for me to hear the words of a dying man. We should have been the last people to get caught. We knew what we were dealing with. The two of us had chased after hurricanes the world over, increasingly depressed, often bickering about geoengineering, reforestation, and the end of capitalism. Our instruments were set up before landfall, and we only returned to assess the aftermath. As hurricanes became stronger or wetter, they inflicted unforeseen damage. Architects, engineers, and emergency planners needed the guidance we could provide. We thought we'd be safe up in the hills behind Kawasaki. We were, until the narrow valley filled like a glass placed under a waterfall, and Jason waded into the flood to retrieve his laptop from our car. I guess I shouldn't have shouted at him not to do it. Men. A trailer came floating down, pinned him against the car, and crushed half the life out of him. I ventured into the water to save him, managed to carry him inside, and surprised myself. But then, I was trying to save a friend, not a computer. So, there is not a lot of details about Mariko. We learn that she is a woman, a scientist, concerned about the climate, and that she has her own views about how to solve or not the climate crisis. But we also see that she's compassionate and that she cares for her friend. So there is some information there. As much of it as I could came out in the action of the story. There's not much action because it is more of an idea story, playing with ideas and playing with a bit of a kind of hesitation whether or not Jason is who he says he is, and then there's a bit of a twist ending or a bit of a surprise ending to kind of probably confirm that he is what he says he is. So the details about Mariko come out both in the fact that she is a narrator, and so she's able to express a point of view about what she's doing. We see her thoughts in this story, how she's reacting to Jason, her forbearance, her compassion for Jason, and so it's I would say up to a point very melded, very intricately woven together. There's the action and there are her reactions, and the reactions are, I would say, at least half the job. The other half comes out in the narration and in her points of view about what is happening or about the general situation. Well, Jason is the guy who gets to speak in a sense the most because he's revealing himself, unburdening himself. In some ways, I probably could have done a better job with Jason. But then, of course, he is a kind of unique character. There are no models for a person like him. Either you interpret him as somebody who believes he's been taken over by an alien, or you actually believe he kind of rides around with an alien presence in his head. So there's not so much that comes out. I would say Jason is less present than Mariko in some ways because he doesn't get to react that much, and he does have a point of view coming out in the dialogue, but I must say that part of his interactions in the story, part of his actions in the story, are there to kind of make the story move and to kind of set up the situation and convince the readers to try and take seriously up to a point what he's saying. So Jason is, I must say, a bit of a secondary character from that point of view, not perhaps as fully fleshed out as much as anybody can be fully fleshed out in such a short story. But still, the point of view that we see Jason rushing out in the face of danger to get his computer, so we see that he's a committed scientist who may be somewhat impulsive also as well. And beyond that, we also see that he's either built a very convincing rationale for what he believes, or that he's kind of come to some accommodation with the alien presence within him. But at the same time, the characterization is trying to, you could say, flesh out that alien presence within him. So that one was a bit of a tricky balancing game. I'm not convinced I got it entirely right. Thank you for the question. Well, this, as I said, this is not a story that emphasizes character. This is a story that tries to balance different aspects, an idea, a narrative, a plot, and characters that have to do just enough to seize the attention of the readers and, to some extent, step off the page. The text has to come alive in some way, and that is going to be thanks to the characters. I've already mentioned some of the things that characterize these people, Mariko and Jason. There's the telling detail, how Jason rushes out somewhat stupidly to get a computer, and that tells us some things about Jason. There's the compassion and mixed with skepticism of Mariko's reactions to what Jason is telling her. In the excerpt I read, we initially do not know who is speaking. One of the first giveaways is her exclamation about men, and that could be seen as something of a stereotyped reaction from a woman, but or somebody identifying as a woman. But clearly, it's also, I think, in my experience, something that comes probably close to a universal, something that is true in many cultures, in many eras, and may not always be voiced, but is often there in some form. So sometimes appealing to things that are either close to stereotypes or universal realities can kind of help you set up a character when you're starting from nothing, basically from the ground up. And so that is something that can help. Acts of kindness, if we want a character that's appealing, I would argue that there has to be actions. There have to be actions that, in a sense, yes, step off the page, that are, if not quite extraordinary, at least are singular and out of the ordinary. And these can be, and if you want the character to be appealing, I would say that these have to be acts of kindness up to a point. Finally, the usual advice, and one that I've taken to heart over time, is that if you want to have a character that steps off the page, as you say, they have to have opinions. And if possible, because it will depend on the story, as much of the story as possible should be filtered through their point of view, and with opinions about whatever they're thinking, whatever they're living through, whatever they're seeing. The more opinions you could say there are on the page, the more actually you'll get the impression that there is somebody alive. I don't know. I'll just thank my wife for her support.